few things in it that are really non-strict for the most part, but it's got some excellent information on pumps and it has excellent information on components, and that's really what you need. So I prefer to use that book. If I were able to find a reasonable substitute, I would, but to date there's nothing. So,
Is it in the library?
no, you'll have to purchase that one book in the bookstore. But I don't know, it might be available online someplace if you check Amazon Prime. Maybe somebody's got it there.
The bookstore carried.
Bookstore does carry it.
They're sold out.
We're sold out?
Yeah, they said they ordered them in July, but
Okay.
they haven't heard back from the
Okay. In the meantime, I think we can survive. We can do without it for a week or two. It's no big deal. But do get it when it becomes available. Okay.
I purchased one yesterday and it was like 5 or 6.
Oh, really?
Maybe they
I
can't.
went by there today.
Okay. How much did that thing run?
Like 44.
Wow. Boy, it's still going up. Okay. All right, that's the book, though. That is it. Let's see. Supplemental textbooks. Not too much. The other textbooks are pretty much aviation textbooks that are military related. They have some bearing. I like to use a lot of the military stuff because sometimes they're a little bit more current than what you find for the civilian literature. And they use in general some of the same components, but understand that the military manuals have a military flair, which means that they cover only specific components that might be found on a military aircraft in some cases. But it provides good reference material for a lot of things that are related to commercial aviation. So they're there for you. What else? Required supplies, I'd recommend having a flash drive. All of the literature that's in the Avion library, I would recommend downloading to a flash drive. Your call, but I can tell you that occasionally the Avion website goes down, and I don't know how long it's going to be down, but at least you've got the information captured on a flash drive, and I'd prefer that you have that kind of at the ready so you can use a computer and get to it. So at least get the PowerPoint, the syllabus, and maybe the question guide, maybe a few manuals that are pertinent to hydraulics. Capture those on a flash drive. Scantron forms, you're going to need those. The exams will be multiple choice exams. Figure about 40 questions. Not all FAA test questions. Some of them will be questions that came out of the lecture. So be prepared. Have at least Scantrons that are available. We use the single column type. They're the 882 Echo Scantron forms. You can get them at the bookstore. Spiral notebook, I'd recommend taking notes. I realize the PowerPoint is available, but sometimes, again, what I speak of is not on the PowerPoint slide. So it might be worthwhile to jot down just a few notes. So that's advice anyway. Pens and pencils, obviously those. Paper and printer paper. We've got a printer, but again, we don't supply the paper. We'll keep the toner in supply, but again, it's on you for the paper that goes in it. In an inexpensive non-cell calculator. Next week, we're going to be crunching numbers for hydraulic theory. We can do everything without a calculator, but believe me, it's time consuming. So what I would prefer that you do in class is just have a regular calculator available so you can at least crunch a few numbers for force area pressure and volume area length problems for hydraulics. Supplemental materials, not much. The way I've kind of outlined the syllabus is by date and topic. So for each of the dates, you can see that there's a topic that's specified, and you're going to have an exam on the 14th of September. It's going to cover just the 3 preceding weeks that came before. So we'll have an exam that covers safety in and around the shop, potential hazards. It'll cover a little bit on force area pressure and volume area length problems, a little bit on gas theory. It'll cover a little also on hydraulic fluids and plumbing maintenance, fluids, seals, and hardware. I don't spend a lot of time on the stuff that you cover in general. In general, you had to fabricate hose and tube with fittings. I don't cover anything on that. So I figure you've had enough information on the conduction of hydraulic fluid or liquids anyway. So the hardware portion of it I don't cover. But seals I cover quite extensively. They cover a lot of fluids. So again, that's what's going to be on the exam. The way that it works, the 40-question exam, I'll usually allow about an hour and a half worth of time. So we got from 4:30 until about 6. Take a break at come back at 6:30, review, and then continue on for the remainder of the lecture. So you've got about an hour and a half to take the exam. I think that's more than enough. For a 40-question test, you should be able to finish that in about an hour. But you've got about an hour and a half to do it. After you take your exam, we'll continue on with the power section of hydraulics. It covers mostly the power section. It would cover the reservoir. It would cover the pumping device. It would also cover any regulating device that might be in the circuit. And we'll spend quite a bit of time on that. We'll talk about reservoir pressurization, which is important for large aircraft to go to altitude. When we don't have any push on that hydraulic fluid, we have to substitute for that push with something. Otherwise, the pump is going to cavitate. And so we have methods to either push on the fluid by putting a piston on the side of the reservoir, or sometimes what we do is we use bleed air that's regulated and push on the fluid directly in order to force the fluid to the inlet of the pump. So we'll spend time on that. We'll spend a little bit of time also on basic pneumatic systems. On the 21st of September, we'll talk about reservoirs and filters, the beginning of the building block for hydraulics. And we'll try to build a circuit from pumps leading all the way back to the reservoir. So that's my intent anyway. So that period of time, we'll talk about reservoirs and filters. After that, we'll get to hand pumps and accumulators. So kind of secondary storage devices for accumulators. They store fluid under pressure. And we'll talk about hand pumps, kind of an auxiliary pump that we sometimes use for emergencies in the aircraft, or for other purposes anyway. We'll spend one period talking about constant displacement pumps, those pumps that have a fixed volume per revolution. We'll spend another period talking about variable displacement pumps, those pumps that can vary their discharge based on system pressure. So quite a bit. And then it looks like exam number 2 is going to come up on the 19th. Of October. It'll only cover the block of information that came after the first exam. So again, it'll cover power sections, it'll cover reservoirs and filters, hand pumps, accumulators, constant and variable displacement pumps. Same format, figure on about 40 questions with review, and we'll press on with the next subject. The 19th also will cover pressure limiting, regulating, and unloading devices. Obviously, with a pump, you have to have something that controls the discharge because liquids are considered to be incompressible. So we have to have something that prevents hugely high pressure spikes and increases that would cause bursting of components. So we need to have pressure limiting devices in the circuit. Some of them are really simple. Some of them are a little bit more complex. And talk about it. On the 26th, direction control and volume regulation. We'll talk about the many different valves that are used in hydraulics in order to control flow. We might have check valves, shuttle valves, manually active check valves, flow control valves, orifice valves, you name it. There's a number of different types of valves for controlling hydraulic flow. The 2nd of November, we'll talk about actuating systems. This would include the working part of the hydraulic circuit that we get the drive, or we're trying to get some usable work applied to or from. So we have actuators or ramps that we use to deliver force to components in order to make these function. Most large commercial aircraft use hydraulics in order to power large flight controls. It wouldn't be practical to use any other method. I mean, for mechanical advantage, it's really pretty much the desirable feature of hydraulics that we're trying to use. So we'll talk about actuators. We'll also talk about hydraulic motors. Sometimes we need to have rotary motion brought to a component, so we use an actuator that does that, and that would be a hydraulic motor. So, on the 9th of November, we're going to have a lecture about schematics, diagrams, hydraulic testing, and support equipment. And we'll have another lecture that covers emergency and complete hydraulic pneumatic systems. And again, some aircraft sport emergency systems that provide for alternate gear extension, or they might provide for other features that, in the event that a primary system does fail. So we'll have something like that. Go to the next page. One period on troubleshooting complete hydraulic systems, and also a little bit of info on mechanics privileges and limitations. you're going to notice when we get to the troubleshooting part, troubleshooting involves kind of a systematic approach, and there's a lot of similarity between troubleshooting electrical systems and hydraulic systems. If you look at a hydraulic circuit, it's very much like an electrical circuit with a beginning and an end that's continuous. We do the same thing with hydraulic fluid. The only difference is we're pushing hydraulic fluid in an electrical system. You have motion of electrons throughout an electrical circuit. So we're doing kind of the same thing, but and the troubleshooting is somewhat similar. When we have a pump in a hydraulic system, the pump is very similar to a generator in an electrical circuit. If we have a reservoir, I should say an accumulator in a hydraulic circuit, it's very much like an aircraft battery. So it stores electrical power, and the other one has hydraulic power stored in it. If we have a hydraulic regulator or an unloading valve, it's a lot like a electrical voltage regulator. So there's a lot of components that are pretty much the same. So, but anyway, we'll make some comparisons and also talk a little bit about troubleshooting. Electrical exam number 3 on the 7th of December with a review, and immediately following the next week, final exam. Final exam will be comprehensive. It'll cover everything from day 1 going forward. So I try to pick questions that are out of each of the areas so that there's no one particular grouping of questions that any is favored any more than any other. So maybe 5 questions out of pumps, 5 questions out of accumulators, 5 questions out of fluids, 5 questions out of seals, so on and so forth. So it provides, I think, kind of an equal or at least a favorable balance of study in order to finish. Attendance and tardiness, what I can tell you, it's important that you're here. Not that everything that I say are pearls of wisdom, but what I think is you gain something by your interaction in the class. So some of the things that I'll talk to you about, maybe you've got a question on, maybe you'd like to ask a question. I'll do my best to answer it. Sometimes also the questions come from your colleagues in the class, and maybe they have a question that you've never thought about, and it'd be nice for you to kind of experience at least what they're trying to say. So I think it's important for you to be here. Additionally, when you're in the lab and working in group environments, it's important that all your lab partners are here because, again, it puts an extreme strain on me when I have to repeat lab projects because people are absent. So, again, I prefer that you're here. It says, academic policies and regulations in the Miramar College catalog are strictly adhered to. Ad drop deadline is 9/1/17. For those of you that I gave ad codes to, you've got to process your ad codes quickly. If you malinger, what will happen is you will not be allowed to add. So, and I can't give you another ad code, so you're going to have to pay for your classes promptly. Get it done. Late ad registration paperwork, there is no such thing. The district is really strict on it. It's out of my control at that point. So you're going to have to take care of business really quick. The withdrawal deadline is October 27, 17. Be advised that if you miss a lot of time, you're going to receive an F in the class. So it says, an F letter grade will be assigned if you miss more than 1 class period or miss an accumulation of time greater than 1 class period beyond the withdrawal deadline. So again, I understand that you're all adults. Most of you have jobs to go to. But you've also got an obligation to be here as well. So I anticipate that you're here. There aren't really any excused absences in the class. I do allow a makeup of 1 period and 1 period only for any time that you might miss, but that's it. So we'll have to play it like that. It's not an open enrollment class, and again, we have to control it to some degree. So that's it. If you need to make up time, schedule office hours for me via email. Again, when I'm in the shop, I can't remember from one date to the next what I told somebody. So what I can tell you is email me, and we can arrange a time during office hours for you to come in. The makeup time is going to be recorded on time cards. I have time cards made up for all of you right now. At the end of lecture, if you're in lecture only, or at the end of lab, you'll punch out the time card and just leave it by the time clock. Okay? Cheating and plagiarism. All of you are adults. Occasionally, I do see people glancing over at other people's exams. And what I sometimes do, and most of you know this already, I ask people to sometimes move from their location and sit someplace else. Don't be alarmed if I ask you to do that. It's not you that I'm concerned about. It's the person that's copying from you that I'm trying to prohibit seeing your So I may ask you to move, and again, don't be alarmed if I ask you to do that. Facility conduct, I appreciate all as adults, and you know, what I can tell you is that I'll do the best that I can. But we have to have some rules and regulations. There is a district policy, DP 3100, that covers a code of conduct for students, and you can read that for yourself. Sometimes I'm embarrassed to read some of the information that's there because you should know what appropriate behavior is. So, anything else? Eating and drinking in the classroom, don't mind if you bring a beverage in here, but please don't bring foodstuffs in here. And for beverages, please cart out the container after you're done. Don't leave it on the floor or on the tabletop for somebody else to stumble into. So take care of your beverage container. Shorts and open-toed shoes. I hate to see them in the shop. I realize it's hot out, but it's somewhat of a safety hazard. I'm trying to guard you against some of the things that might happen. I know some of the instructors are lenient on shorts and open-toed shoes, but I can't tolerate it. So in the lecture, don't care too much. And tonight out in the lab, don't care if you've got shorts on. But for all the subsequent lab periods, I'd like you to be in regular trousers and also closed-toed shoes. Please don't wear sandals or anything like that in the lab. You're probably going to need tools. I would expect that you've gone through general, so you have the complement of tools that are specified on the tool list. You don't need a heck of a lot. You'll need maybe some open-end wrenches, a few screwdrivers, but have your tools available. If you're going to be working in groups, one person in your group should have tools. I would encourage you to get a locker and keep some tools in it so that you can work on things. If I see you out in the shop trying to dismember some of the components by unapproved methods, I get irate. I just blow through the ceiling. So when I see people using pliers on nuts, when I see them, clamping things down inside of a vise without using any type of jaw protector, man, what it means to me is that you're not following proper procedure. And to let you go into the field like that, well, I'm doing a disservice to your employer. So I will talk to you about it, but again, I look very carefully on things. The general instructors, I think, do their best to try to give you standard practice. You should know that you should have wrenches in order to properly remove nuts or bolts. But again, occasionally I see people get in a hurry, and what do? They grab the next best thing, which is probably inappropriate, and the equipment gets damaged. So again, use the correct equipment or correct tools for taking things apart. What else? Lockers. For the lockers anyway, have a lock available, steal a tube from a tenant, and they'll assign a locker to you. Classroom and smart podium access, no big deal, but this area is supposedly the instructor's area. Stay away from the computer, stay away from the flash drive that's in it, and that's it. Instructor contact, you can reach me via email or by telephone, both are there. If you email me, please put something in the subject line that is pertinent to the class. Use 103C or the course reference number so I can know that it's not some type of swooping push type of thing. If there's nothing there or something that doesn't make any sense, I don't open the email. So just make sure that it's at least addressed correctly or something in the subject line. Students with disabilities, if you have a disability that we can address, we'll try to. We've got an office on campus that handles student-related disabilities. They can help you, and I'll do my best to accommodate you. But I need a piece of paper from them that describes the type of accommodation that I need to see. So if you need to sit in the front, or you need, you have your vision or hearing difficulties, we can accommodate you. But I need that piece of paper. Okay. Method evaluation, I told you pretty much how it works. The exams, I think, are spaced pretty well. You should have adequate time to study. I think you've got a lot of studying materials. There shouldn't be too much difficulty. Know that occasionally I give quizzes. The quizzes are 5-point quizzes. Usually you can't make them up. I use them as an inducement to come into class. Now, I know some of you are going to be coming in late, but if I see people repeatedly coming in late day after day after day, I start to think, well, maybe it's time for a quiz or two to induce people to come in on time. But again, I use that with discretion too. I don't like to do it all the time, but occasionally I do. Your exams, if you miss an exam, I will will have another exam for you. It will not be the same exam that your colleagues took. It will cover the same subject matter. It may have a tad more difficulty. So that's how the exams work. Let's take a look at the last page. Course grade composition and calculation. Your course examinations and quizzes account for 80% of your grade. It's a weighted average. 18% of your grade would be the course final, and 2% would be the written assignment you do. And anything else, just remember what I told you about the written assignment. Please turn it in. If you don't turn it in, you'll get a 0, but most importantly, when you do turn it in, I may take my time in grading it. And the other thing to remember, too, is if it's a wobbler between letter grades, that written assignment may make a difference. So, again, please turn in your written assignment. Course grades, how it kind of works. 90 to 100% would be an A, 80 to 89 a B, 70 to 79 is a C, 60 to 69 is a D, below 60% is an F. And as a recap, the times and day of the course we meet at are listed. We meet on Thursdays from 4:30 to 7:40. It says a break every 15-minute period. What's worked in the past for me for most of the evening classes is to give you a break at 6 and then commence back at 6:30. Would that be okay with you? Yes? Okay. All right, so be it. We'll take a break at 6 o'clock and then come back at 6:30. Office hours, a recap there. Times and dates are available. Times and days. And the only time I don't have office hour periods would be the last week of the semester. It gets way too hectic to accommodate everybody in that last week. So for the first 15 weeks, hey, no problem. That last week, I just don't have the time. Okay? So that's it. Any questions? Anything at all that I can cover in the syllabus? Okay? All right. So let's hit it. Let's talk a little bit about hydraulics.